I'm vengeance.
Matt Reeves' The Batman is the first Batman film adaptation, which doesn't show us Batman's origin, or the first one that takes itself seriously, at least.
Computer overcompensate. Who never skips leg day? Batman! Who always pays their taxes? Not Batman!
The reason ostensibly being that it's just a part of the cultural awareness at this point.
This is where I watched my parents die, Parappa. This is where you watch your parents die. Oops.
We already know why Bruce Wayne dresses up like a bat and beats up criminals in his free time. His parents' death inspired him to become a hero who could stop the bad guy with a gun the next time innocent lives were threatened. We do spend all of 20 seconds toward the beginning of the film being reminded of the Wayne's murder via Gotham 7 News. But to be honest, I don't think even a complete Batman newcomer needed it. Like in Chinatown, which Reeves has cited as an influence on the film, where we never really learn the details of what happened to Jake and the girl he was trying to protect all those years ago, we know enough from the way he talks about it and the effect it clearly has on his psyche in the present. And as far as rendering a rich psyche for Batman goes, I think Reeves and Pattinson blow every other adaptation out of the water. Many adaptations focus on Batman becoming more than a man. As Bruce Wayne says in Batman Begins,
"As a man, I'm flesh and blood. I can be ignored, I can be destroyed, but as a symbol, I can be incorruptible. I can be everlasting."
Sometimes they deal with his struggle to hold on to humanity as he ascends to something more. But never before have we seen a Batman who was unable to see that his everlasting symbol was itself so tangled up in his personal struggle that it was just as morally bereft as he is. As Matt Reeves said on the Real Blend Cinema podcast,
especially in this movie, the notion is that as he begins, it's the only way he can make sense of his life. You know, he can't get over what happened. And so he's kind of driven in a way that doesn't really make sense, to be honest. It's a kind of crazy mission that he goes on, and it's a compulsion. He would probably tell you he was doing it to improve the city, but the degree to which it's personal is beyond, I think, even his understanding at this point.
This is not a story about Batman struggling to impose his righteous mission on an unworthy city, although that's certainly how he sees it at the beginning. This is a story about how Batman's mission needs to change. And that means, unlike in the opening sequences of Batman 1989 or The Dark Knight, our introduction to the character is not designed to establish Batman's competence and effectiveness in the city before the antagonist appears to disrupt his string of successes.
What's the difference between you and me?
The difference is
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Though he wins his physical fight, this Batman's first scene is not, in his own eyes, a victory. And when the antagonist appears, it's not to disrupt and overrun Batman's mission, it's to complement it in horrifying fashion.
Hi. I'm Ben. I'm back. I have a beard now. And today, let's take a look at how the Batman unlearns vengeance.
First, we're going to dig into what makes this Batman's mission so twisted when we meet him. Then we're going to look at how three different characters, Selina Kyle, the Riddler, and Thomas Wayne, push him away from this mission and pull him toward a new one. Batman's first scene in this film is a night in the life, for him and for Gotham City. He's on the prowl for criminals, and he is on a mission of vengeance. He sees criminals lurking everywhere.
Hidden in the chaos is the element, waiting to strike like snakes.
Notice the language he uses here. He says, euphemistically, the element, like he's a suburban parent concerned about the wrong element moving into the neighborhood.
The screenplay adds another clause to this sentence, cut from the film. It reads, "Waiting to strike like snakes at the decent, the vulnerable."
In only his first line, Batman has already announced his entire worldview. The city is a crowd. There are the vulnerable and the decent, and the snakes, hidden in the chaos, waiting to strike.
So where does that put Batman? What is the solution to a world like this? He tells us in his very next line.
And I'm there too, watching. 2 years of nights have turned me into a nocturnal animal.
He has descended into something primal. What does it mean to be a Batman? It means you have to relinquish a bit of your humanity to something animal.
Again, there's an additional line in the script which didn't make it into the film. It reads, "My senses are heightened now. I can almost smell them."
This emphasizes not just Batman's animalism, but that he views criminals as having a stench. They're not just bad, they're disgusting. Just their presence offends his senses.
Behind the narration, we follow 3 different crimes and their perpetrators. A masked drophead pulling a convenience store pickup, a group of vandals graffitiing the Gotham Bank, and a gang in skull paint mugging a guy on a train. The camera always lingering on the shadows. The brilliance of this montage is that our hopes and fears as the audience parallel those of the criminals. Is Batman in those shadows over there? What was that noise? Was it him? Batman narrates that
Fear is a tool.
and we feel it along with his victims. He concludes this narration with a final metaphor, pushing Batman's inhumanness even further.
They think I'm hiding in the shadows. But I am the shadows.
First, he tells us that he's both sub and superhuman as a nocturnal animal. Then he pushes his inhumanity beyond the living. He becomes the shadow itself, a force of nature.
The only way to push his identity as Batman beyond this would be to abstract it, to make it something totally intangible, but psychologically real. In other words, the only place to go from here is to make Batman an idea. What idea? Well, this guy wanted to know too.
The hell are you supposed to be?
I'm vengeance.
Man to animal to force of nature to idea. This is the path of identity Batman has traveled in the past 2 years, and he summarizes it here in a few lines.
This is the world according to Batman. Criminals, crime, the element are lurking everywhere. Snakes in the grass. These are not people, these are animals. They stink, and they have to be purged. They have to be venged. Batman, vengeance, has to become the very shadow, a feature of the world, an incarnation of vengeance, sniffing out and snuffing out the infestation of crime in Gotham. At least, that's what he thought.
The guy he saves from those thugs is just as afraid of him as they were.
Please don't hurt me.
Like the kid Batman saves from a cultic sacrifice in The New Frontier, who's just as afraid of him as of the cultists.
No! Stay away! Stay away!
Back off, you're scaring the boy.
I wish I could say I'm making a difference. But I don't know. The city's eating itself. Maybe it's beyond saving.
Batman is starting to suspect that his approach isn't working. The trend line is going in the opposite direction, even if he is making his own small impact.
This is where we find our hero at the beginning of this movie. He's totally sure, uncompromising in his black and white worldview, yet he's plagued with doubts. He's going to learn over the course of this movie that if he wants to save Gotham, his worldview needs to change.
You're pretty good at that.
Batman's attitude towards Selina is consistently derisive and paternalistic, even as he's clearly interested in her. He's disgusted, there's no other word for it, when he thinks she works at the 44 Below, a mob hangout.
Is that where you work? Selina.
She corrects him, saying that she only works the bar up above. But on his way out, he still feels the need to remind her.
I'm not safe here.
I can take care of myself.
He starts off scolding her for being in with the wrong crowd, and when that doesn't get anywhere, he switches to condescension in the guise of looking out for her safety. She has to insist that she has no need for his paternalism.
He's repulsed when he learns that she knows Falcone.
You know Carmine Falcone.
I told you it's a mob spot.
You didn't tell me you had a relationship with him.
I don't have a relationship with him, okay?
Well, that's not what it looked like.
Even though ostensibly he's using her to get inside info about the mob and should be thrilled to exploit this connection. No. He's mad because he likes Selina, in spite of himself. And if he likes someone who's bad, who's corrupt, it's a blemish not just on them, but on his own soul, which he believes is pure. Catwoman, as is often her role in Batman media, gives Batman cognitive dissonance about his own moral code. As Robert Pattinson says in the Becoming Catwoman featurette,
There are criminals and there are victims of criminals. And I think Catwoman is the first person where he really struggles to think, well, you are on the bad side, but I like you.
his frustration with Selina comes to a head when she meets him at the Bat Signal. She seeks help getting justice, vengeance, for Annika, but all he can do is chide her for stealing the bag of cash from the Penguin.
Wasn't sure I'd see you again.
Yeah, well, things were getting a little hot for me, so... How could they do that to her? That piece of shit cop, Kenzie. Her body was in his car. I'm gonna find him, and I'm gonna make him pay. You gonna help me?
Help you?
Yeah, I thought you were vengeance.
He's appalled that she would ask him for help after he just saw her commit a criminal act. It doesn't even compute for him why she would want to stay in town. He's ready to write her off as another selfish criminal, part of the element.
When she invokes his moniker, Vengeance, he dismisses her.
Your friend got involved with the wrong people. She didn't know any better. Maybe you should have explained it to her.
What the hell is that supposed to mean?
It means your choices have consequences.
Jesus Christ. Choices? You know, whoever the hell you are, you obviously grew up rich.
Batman, supposed avenger of the innocent, dismisses Annika as undeserving of vengeance for her killers. She got what she asked for. What she deserved, he seems to say. He ironically suggests that Selina should have explained it to her, the implication being that she seems to have a really good sense of who the right and wrong people are to get involved with. When Batman says that your choices have consequences, what he's really saying is, when you do wrong, you move from one category to the other in his worldview. You may have been decent and vulnerable before, but once you start dealing drops, once you start sleeping with the mayor, or he's about to insinuate with a mob boss, you absolve yourself of that protected status. You descend irretrievably into the element and must be purged with the rest of it.
But he goes even further in his accusations. After Selina tries to reject his absolutism, he continues.
Was it worth it?
What?
Compromising yourself for money? What'd you have to do to set up that score? How close did you have to get? To Penguin? To Falcone?
You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
This, to me, is the most appalling piece of dialogue we've seen from a live-action Batman.
I've worked for you a long time, and I'm paid less than Robin. Same job, same employer means equal pay for men and women.
No time for jokes, Batgirl.
Well, okay, second most. He can't even bring himself to say it, but he's basically accusing Selina of whoring herself to Falcone so she can steal from his operation. He's disgusted by it. He's disgusted by her. Because again, despite himself, he likes her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have agreed to meet at all. He hates the idea that the girl he likes could be using sex for money or power.
You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Falcone owes me that money.
He owes you?
Yeah, and a lot more.
No, really. Why's that?
You know what? I can't even talk to you.
No. I want to know why a guy like Falcone would owe you anything.
Because he's my father!
He doesn't know what to say. He's embarrassed that he thought for a moment she belonged in his bad category, with the element. To his credit, he apologizes immediately, but he's still not able to see Selina for her own complex, capable self.
Will you help me?
Just don't make any moves without me, understand? It's no more dangerous than you know.
I told you, baby. I can take care of myself.
When she leaves the zone of snakes and criminals, she goes right back to being only decent and vulnerable and in need of his protection. And for the second time, she has to remind him that she can take care of herself.
Here's Matt Reeves talking about this scene at the American Film Institute.
We know that she has a very personal story that he's judging her for, that he's wrong about, that it's an awakening over the course of the whole movie to go like, dude, you know what the fuck you're talking about, okay?
Fundamentally, what this scene shows is that Batman doesn't believe that circumstance can lead good people to do bad things. Why is that? Well, he reasons, he was traumatized. He was orphaned. He was dealt an awful hand by circumstance. But he overcame it. He turned his trauma into something positive. So if you're dealt a bad hand, if you get in a tough spot and you compromise yourself for an expedient end, you have failed. You have done wrong, and you deserve what comes to you as a result. Batman struggles with Selina because he can't place her into his binary worldview. Is she decent and in need of his protection? Or is she criminal scum who deserves to be treated like all the rest? Well, it turns out she's neither. And this simply does not compute. It befuddles Batman's worldview. But one counterexample of someone he can't quite place between good and evil isn't going to collapse his entire value system. He's going to need a little more pushing to see the flaws in his perspective.
If you are justice, please do not lie. What is the price for your blind eye?
Riddler's message comes to Batman in a different venue. Over the course of the movie, he exposes to Batman just how broken the system in Gotham is. It's not that Batman doesn't know that things aren't working in the city. Otherwise, why would he don the mask and prowl the streets? Rather, he sees corruption as something that comes from criminals and criminality, encroaching on the world of the innocent. What the Riddler lays bare in the film is that corruption is not the result of criminality, but in some ways, its source. When the system is broken, bad behavior is incentivized. Criminality is a symptom, and you can't beat a cold with cough drops. When Gordon and Batman go to investigate the mayor's car, Gordon tells us all we need to know about Gotham's corruption.
Yeah, he's got a car. Guess it's good to be the mayor.
We don't know anything this guy's actually done yet, but we know he's using his mayoral power to fund his extravagant lifestyle. It could be campaign funding, bribes, insider trading, embezzlement, or just leveraging his clout for favors. Or it could be that only someone this independently wealthy can even stand a chance of becoming mayor in the first place. Certainly what we later learn about Thomas Wayne's own mayoral campaign seems to confirm this. But whatever the means, the cars alone tell us that he's less than a noble public servant.
When Batman and Gordon are investigating the site of the commissioner's death, they identify the commissioner talking to a drug dealer in the pictures Riddler leaked. Let's take a look at how they both react.
I don't get it. Why would Pete get involved with something like this? Maybe he's not who you thought. You make it sound like he had it coming. He was a cop. Cross the line.
Once again, Batman withholds empathy from his interlocutor's murdered friend because actions have consequences, or you make it sound like he had it coming. Batman doesn't kill. This isn't how he would have avenged them for their wrongdoing. But he isn't flummoxed by what he sees as nearly karmic outcomes.
As Matt Reeves said on IndieWire's Filmmaker Toolkit podcast,
to this detective story that, on the one hand, seems like it's just completely sort of echoing Batman's worldview. Like, he feels the world's corrupt. All of these things happening, like there's a moment where Gordon is talking, that Gordon has lost his partner, his former partner, who was the commissioner. And he's saying, basically, Gordon says, you make it sound like he had it coming. And he's like, he was a cop, he crossed the line. And it's like, wait, where's your empathy, dude?
if you're a protector of the innocent, as the police ought to be, the second you cross the line into criminality, you've invited hell on yourself. You've invited vengeance. And now there's more than one in town. Batman's monopoly on vengeance has come to an end, and it forces him to confront that maybe vengeance wasn't what he was after all along. In a deleted scene where Batman visits Arkham to ask the Joker about what the Riddler might be after, the Joker tells him,
I think somewhere deep down, you're just terrified. Because you're not sure he's wrong, huh? You think they deserved it, huh?
I think the Joker might be onto something. I can understand why this was deleted from the final version of the film, because it almost makes the point too explicitly, an uncomfortable truth that Batman is not yet ready to accept. Right from the beginning of the film, Matt Reeves invites us to see a certain similarity between Riddler and Batman. The first time I watched this movie, it took me a minute to be certain that the opening shots were from Riddler's perspective and not Batman's. We, the audience, later spy on Selina through Batman's binoculars in the same way we earlier spied on the mayor through Riddler's. Here's Matt Reeves on IndieWire's Filmmaker Toolkit podcast talking about this thematic parallel.
The idea that you start by looking through the Riddler's binoculars, but then later you're looking through the Drifter and Bruce's binoculars, and that there's this kind of thematic dialogue that those characters are in, Riddler being rooted in a dark idea of what we're capable of as human beings, and how Batman, in his own way, is coming very close to that, even though there's another part of him trying to do the right thing.
Batman speaks to the Riddler for the first time when he answers his call from Coulson's phone.
Who are you? Me. Nobody. I'm just an instrument, here to unmask the truth about this cesspool we call a city.
He asks the Riddler the same question that was first asked of him when he appeared from the shadows at the train station. Riddler's answer is less concise, but is remarkably reminiscent of Batman's own idea of himself. Batman also views himself as an anonymous instrument of justice. And the language is different, but the disgust in his voice when he talks about corruption in the city is the same as Batman's. And I think his authoritarian attitude to vengeance and justice is the same.
Of course, Batman doesn't recognize this at first. Riddler kills. That puts him squarely in the morally corrupt camp in his black and white worldview.
As Robert Pattinson says in the Vengeance Meets Justice featurette,
I think it's more similar than Bruce would like to really admit. I think that's why it's extremely troubling for him by the end of it, because the only difference in a lot of ways is that the Riddler follows through and his justice is fatal.
When they contact Riddler via radaalada.com, he poses a riddle, the answer of which describes both of them, though the Riddler doesn't know it.
I grew up from a seed, tough as a weed. But in a mansion, in a slum, I'll never know where I come from. Do you know what I am? Any idea?
Yeah. He's an orphan.
You can see in his eyes that he relates to the description. The clue leads to the Old Wayne orphanage where Riddler grew up and where Bruce starts to learn about his father's secret history. But if Batman was cleverer, it could also have led him to the famous orphan Bruce Wayne at Wayne Tower, a mansion in the slum that is Gotham City.
We'll come back to Bruce's father later. But the irony here is that even though Bruce clearly connects to the description of what it's like to be an orphan, growing up from a seed, tough as a weed, never really knowing where he's from, he fails to get the full meaning of Riddler's clue and save Alfred because he can't even conceive of the idea that the Riddler could describe Bruce and himself in the same breath.
But though Riddler doesn't know Bruce's secret identity, doesn't even care what it is, he sees their similarity. He sees them as a team. Tell me you can't see the sparks flying when he catches sight of Batman through the glass at the diner.
For Batman, this is a moment of denouement. I won, you lost. But for Riddler, this is a moment of quiet conspiracy. You've won the police force's trust, walking amongst them. They'd have no idea what we're about to unleash together.
Here's Paul Dano talking about this moment from the Riddler's perspective in the Vengeance Meets Justice featurette.
I think seeing the Batman was probably one of those transcendent moments in his life, an aha moment where you project something onto that figure out there and you see some hidden piece of yourself or something that you want to be. Without the Batman, you would never have the Riddler.
Batman believes that good people don't work with evil people, and evil people don't idolize good people. End of story.
When he scans Riddler's apartment, he takes the exact wrong conclusion from Riddler's final clues, because he's blinded by his assumption that because he sees Riddler as an adversary, Riddler must see him as one too. This comes to a head when they meet at Arkham. The hierarchy of information in this scene is richer than anywhere else in the film. Now, the Riddler gets his denouement. He gets to show Batman how little he really knows. First, Riddler announces how excited he is to finally bring his master plan to fruition, and to meet Batman face to face.
I've been invisible my whole life. I guess I won't be anymore, will I? They'll remember me now. They'll remember both of us.
Notice how, again, he draws the two of them together. Then he bemoans the only part of his plan, their plan, that didn't go as he had hoped. Batman thinks Riddler is exposing his secret identity, but really he's taking a moment to commiserate with the only man he sees as a kindred spirit. This suspense carries through Riddler's entire monologue about what it means to be an orphan.
Bruce Wayne, the orphan, living in some tower over the park isn't being an orphan. It's 30 kids to a room, 12 years old and already a drop-it, numbing the pain. You wake up screaming with rats, chewing your fingers, but oh no. Let's talk about the billionaire with the lying dead daddy, because at least the money makes it go down easy.
When Bruce is at his most vulnerable, the Riddler pulls on that same thread as Selina, unraveling his understanding of his own struggles and convictions. When Batman earlier learned that Riddler was an orphan, if anything, it confirmed his worldview. They were both orphans, but one of them grew up and became good, and the other grew up and became evil. So clearly the defect is in Edward Nashton's soul. Riddler makes the opposite case, that Bruce wasn't even an orphan to begin with. That one moment of empathy Bruce almost shared with Ed when he learned that both of them were orphans is torn to shreds. And finally, Bruce realizes that he was completely wrong about what Riddler wanted from him.
Bruce Wayne. He's the only one we didn't get.
We've been so embedded in Bruce's perspective for the past 2 hours, what Matt Reeves calls his subjective storytelling, that it didn't even occur to us that Bruce was misunderstanding him, or at least it didn't occur to me when I watched this film for the first time. We have forgotten that we began the movie not in Bruce's perspective, but in Ed's. We're tempted by the film's presentation of Batman as a righteous avenger, by our love for the character, by the genre conventions of the modern superhero film, to draw the same hard line between good and evil that Batman does, and stand squarely on his side of it. Here's Matt Reeves discussing this implication of the audience on IndieWire's Filmmaker Toolkit podcast.
Like, that's why the movie starts with the point of view of looking through the Riddler's glasses, and we are right at the beginning, we are voyeurs with this killer, and we are connected to him. And I wanted the audience to be implicated in that, look, when you go to see a Batman movie, there's an expectation and a desire to see him unleash on the criminal element. And this idea that he is saying that he's vengeance, and that the audience would enjoy that. I wanted a movie that would be the entry point. But then by the end of the story, the idea is that those tables are turned and you start to go, oh, wait, was that really the right approach? Is that the approach that should be taken, taking the law into your own hands, being vengeance, being born out of that kind of visceral, personal animus? And so that the audience is implicated because, of course, you've enjoyed it. And now you go like, oh, wait, whoa.
On a second watch, this is not the scene of greatest threat to Batman from the Riddler. It's the height of his own self-sabotaging worldview.
Many mystery stories fail once you know the twist, but on a second watch, the tension in this scene only grows stronger. It now arises not from whether Batman's secret will be revealed, but from the dramatic irony between Batman and the viewer. We know he's been missing the bigger picture of the flaw in his worldview. Now we get to watch him piece it together in real time.
So Batman realizes that he was wrong about Riddler's motives, but it takes him a bit to grasp what those really are. Riddler begins monologuing in adoration of him.
God, look at you. Your mask is amazing. All everyone wants to do is unmask you, but they're missing the point. You and I both know. I'm looking at the real you right now. Why did you write me?
The only response Batman can come up with is to wonder why Riddler wrote him all those cards. Why he called Batman out in his grand scheme if he didn't want to take him down. Even after Riddler gushes about how much he adores Batman, he still can't see that he views them as allies. Good people are on this side of the glass, and evil people are on the other.
But Riddler shows him that they have been working together, whether Batman believes it or not.
I told you. We've been doing this together. You're part of this.
We didn't do anything together.
We did. What did we just do? I asked you to bring him the light, and you did. We're such a good team.
We're not a team.
I had all the pieces. I had the answers, but I didn't know how to make them listen. You gave me that.
I gave you nothing.
You showed me what was possible.
You showed me all it takes is fear and a little focused violence. You inspired me.
How easily could you see Batman saying that all it takes is fear and a little focused violence to clean this city up?
He said something very similar 2 hours ago in his own monologue about the power of fear. Yet he still rejects Riddler's analogy.
You're out of your goddamn mind.
What?
This is all in your head. You're sick. Twisted.
How could you say that?
You think you'll be remembered? You're a pathetic psychopath. Begging for attention. You're gonna die alone. No. A nobody.
Even with it all laid out in front of him, he isn't yet ready to admit just how similar their projects to purge corruption from Gotham are. So, we have an example of someone Bruce can't quite place into good and evil, and someone he sees as evil making the case that their missions of justice are actually pretty similar. But neither of these people are all that important to Bruce. He just met them. They don't even know who he really is.
The final knock on the prison house doors of Bruce's disposition has to hit closer to home. It has to take Bruce's image of goodness, what he holds most dear, and show it to be capable of evil.
From a very young age, my family, Martha's family, the Arkhams, instilled in both of us that giving back is not just an obligation, it's a passion. That is our family's legacy.
The first time Bruce's parents are brought up in the film is on the news broadcast following the killing of Mayor Mitchell.
In an eerie coincidence, it was 20 years ago this week that celebrated billionaire philanthropist Dr. Thomas Wayne and his wife Martha were slain during Wayne's own mayoral campaign. It was a shocking crime that remains unsolved to this day.
His father is already in his mind then when Alfred invokes his family's legacy to encourage him to handle his finances more responsibly.
If this continues, it won't be long before you've nothing left.
I don't care about that. Any of that.
You don't care about your family's legacy?
What I'm doing is my family's legacy.
For Bruce, his parents' murder isn't just unsolved, it's unresolved. It's the reason he goes out every night to fight crime.
When Alfred pushes, he invokes his father again to push him off.
Alfred, stop. You're not my father.
I'm well aware.
What we'll see is that Bruce doesn't just mean this to say Alfred doesn't have authority over him. He's invoking the man who represents perfect moral goodness to him. Dr. Thomas Wayne, the surgeon, who dedicated his life to saving the lives of others, and sought to renew the life of his city as mayor before his untimely death. He is telling Alfred that he's inadequate when compared to his angelic father.
Bruce's father comes up again when he goes to Mayor Mitchell's funeral. First, when Alfred insists he wears his father's cufflinks.
You have to keep up appearances. You're still a Wayne.
What about you? You're Wayne?
Your father gave them to me.
And then when Carmine Falcone reminds Bruce that Thomas saved his life once when he couldn't go to the hospital.
So we showed up on his doorstep, operated right on the dining room table. You don't think that meant something he did then?
It means he took the Hippocratic Oath.
Bruce doesn't need to wonder why his father helped Falcone. He, like Bruce, took an oath, a solemn vow to follow an absolute moral code under all circumstances. We're starting to get a sense of where he got his own ideas about his own unbreakable oath.
When Batman and Gordon find the video of Thomas Wayne's mayoral campaign announcement at the orphanage, they don't yet know the significance of the phrase, renewal is a lie. But when Bruce sees the ghost of his father speaking on that wall, he's enchanted. The screenplay calls it a reverie. He reveres his father. For a moment, his posture isn't that of the menacing Batman, incarnation of vengeance, but of a little boy in a Halloween costume watching his hero. Then we return to Alfred. Bruce has been nothing but rude and dismissive to Alfred the entire film, except when he's helping with Bruce's crusade as Batman. But when he's rushing back to the tower, desperate to warn Alfred that he's being targeted, we see how much he really cares. The bomb goes off, and Bruce visits Alfred in the hospital. The nurse asks if Alfred has any other family.
No. It's just me.
Alfred might not be Bruce's father. But he's not just his butler either. He's family. Would Bruce idealize him, too, if he was gone?
Alfred's hospitalization means that when the Riddler leaks Thomas Wayne's scandal, announcing to the whole city that Wayne had a journalist killed to cover up his wife's family history of murder and psychosis, there's no one for Bruce to turn to for answers. No one except for Carmine Falcone. Falcone tells it to him like this. Thomas tried to pay this journalist off, but he wasn't going for it. So he asked Falcone to
put the fear of God in this guy. And when fear isn't enough, I know. You thought your father was a Boy Scout. But you'd be surprised what even a good man like him is capable of in the right situation.
This, again, does not comport with Bruce's worldview. Who is a good man who can act badly in the right situation? To Bruce, good is not situational. It's absolute.
In the next scene, Alfred finally wakes up from his coma, and this is how Bruce begins their conversation.
You lied to me. My whole life.
Bruce, your adoptive father just woke up from a coma because he got blown up by a bomb that was supposed to go to you. Can't you show the guy a little grace? Or even, I don't know, love? But no. The news about his father is so world-shattering that it takes priority even over the most important person in his life. Bruce's father comes before everything, and Bruce's father, Alfred, is not, as he has already made clear.
All these years, I've spent fighting for him, believing that he was a good man.
He was a good man. He made a mistake.
Mistake. Get a man killed.
Alfred actually echoes Falcone's sentiment. Even a good man can do a bad thing. But Bruce's image of his father is shattered. Killing crosses his line, full stop. That means his dad, his beacon of goodness, is one of those filthy criminals. Those snakes in the grass. The element.
Alfred assures him that his father never meant for the man to be killed, that he immediately wanted to go to the cops and was shot, along with Bruce's mom, later that night.
So did Bruce's father cross the line and take a life? Sort of, yes. And sort of, no. It's somewhere in the middle, in the gray area between the black and the white. And that's not his father's only sin.
When they interrogate the cop Kenzie, he squeals that the renewal fund Thomas Wayne set up before he died has been the principal source of embezzlement, laundering, and bribery for Falcone and his corrupt government for the last 20 years. He reveals to Bruce just how deeply rooted the corruption in Gotham is. He shows him what Riddler has been pointing to this entire time. Is that all Thomas Wayne's fault? Is it his responsibility? Partially. He wasn't the one doing the embezzlement, but it wouldn't have been possible without his fund.
And now everything is falling into place. Even good people can create bad outcomes. Even good projects can create bad outcomes. Is his project, the Gotham Project, the Batman, one of them? The Riddler's expose campaign worked. Batman now knows that this city's problems are more institutional than the kind you can solve by beating up criminals in the street. He can only deny the Riddlers and his kinship for so long.
The breaking point comes when he beats Riddler's goons at the stadium. Gordon unmasks one and asks,
Who the hell are you?
I'm vengeance.
Right here is where Batman stares into the face of what he no longer wants to be. You can see the recognition in his eyes. Here's Matt Reeves on IndieWire's Filmmaker Toolkit podcast discussing this moment.
The Riddler-inspired minion, when he says, I'm vengeance, that's the idea that Batman Bruce has been resisting the entire film, was this idea that somehow the message he's projecting into the city is the wrong one.
I have had an effect here. But not the one I intended. Vengeance won't change the past. Mine or anyone else's. I have to become more.
But that's a long way from knowing what you do want to be. If you take away the vengeance, what's left of the Batman? Well, what's at the foundation of his worldview? The core of his moral perspective? It's his one unbreakable rule.
Human life is sacred. That's what Thomas Wayne taught his son. You can't purge evil from another person's soul, let alone a whole city's. You can't beat up the shadow self and banish it forever. But you can show people a better way to be. You can give them hope. He's already started with Selina.
Let's go kill that son of a bitch. This creep too, let's finish this.
No. We'll get him. Not that way.
There is no other way. He owns the city.
Cross that line. You'll become just like him.
Selina wants to kill Falcone, ostensibly for the sake of the city, but also we know for what he did to her mom. And the thing is, even though Selina doesn't know it, Bruce has just as much reason to want Falcone dead as she does. Falcone took his mom from him, too.
But he knows that by stopping Selina from killing Falcone, he's saving her just as much as he's saving him.
He has to pay!
You don't have to pay with him. You paid enough.
For all of Batman's wrongness about moral purity, he's right about one thing. Being a monster hurts yourself as much as it hurts others. His mistake was blaming people as if they wanted to make themselves monstrous. But no one wants to be a monster. They just think it's their only choice. Batman is at his best when his moral code isn't something used to bludgeon wrongdoers, but a guiding light for those lost in the dark. When he can finally step out of the shadows and give people hope.
People need hope. The city's angry. Scarred. Like me. Our scars can destroy us. But if we survive them, they can transform us. They can give us the power to endure.
Finally, the people the Batman saves are seeing him as a hero, not a harbinger.
Batman is a model of post-traumatic growth, of taking something terrible and making meaning out of it. He used to think, when others couldn't, it was a sign of their own moral failing. Now he knows better. He knows that some scars never get the chance to heal all the way, but that if you can help their healing, they can make people stronger than they'll ever be if you don't let them.
The final scene of the film is between Batman and Catwoman. One last goodbye before they go their separate ways. Before, Batman saw his job as protecting Selina from herself and others. She had to keep reminding him that,
I told you, baby. I can take care of myself.
but now he knows that's the wrong way to think about his mission. The bat signal lights, and it's time for them to leave.
Selina. Take care of yourself.
He doesn't just mean it like a usual goodbye, and he doesn't just mean it for her either.
He used to think that the world could be divided into the decent and vulnerable, and the snakes waiting for their chance to strike. But now, he knows that doesn't give either group enough credit. The decent and vulnerable are not just that. They can take care of themselves. And criminals are not born. They're shaped by their environment, pushed to wrongdoing by bad incentives. If you can show them a better way to be, they can turn their trauma into something positive and make meaning in their lives.
Batman lifted himself up from his darkest moment, but he didn't do it alone. Alfred reached out his hand and supported Bruce through everything. The Riddler didn't have that. And now, he finally realizes, if he really wants to make a difference, he needs to do the same for Gotham.
Swear to me, I'm vengeance. Swear to me, I'm vengeance. Where's Rachel? Why did you say that name? Where's Rachel? Why did you say that name?
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman!
I'm just vengeance. That's it. Just vengeance. Where's Rachel? Where's Rachel?
No time for jokes, Batgirl.